Erica, I have 1 o'clock. Try and see who's here to see if we have a quorum.
I have 4 out of 7 members.
Okay.
We're good. 4 out of 7 current members. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
It's a busy Friday.
Isn't it though? I keep expecting the sunshine to slow things down for people, but it doesn't seem to be.
Would you like me to do a roll call?
That would be great.
I have the
Dave came on just in time.
list right up in front of me. So Catherine's on. I'm on. Is Secretary Curley on? Let's see her. Not yet.
Yes.
Chad Farrell. Not yet. And I see Joe Segali, and I see Ann Lawless. I see, is Karen Horn on the line?
Karen let me know that she had a conflict come up at the last minute, so she had to skip, but she'll watch it over the weekend.
Great. And is Mike Burke on the line? Okay, and I think I see David Snedeker's on the line as well.
I am.
All right. So with that, we have a quorum. Let's start. Okay, so we will start with the, oh, there's Mike and Chad. I'm gonna let them in.
Great.
All right, more than a quorum. Hi, Mike and Chad. We were just getting started. We just did roll call.
Hey there. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for being a couple of minutes late. I had a couple of glitches there getting into Teams.
Team, we love it. We love Teams.
Love Teams. Yeah, right.
So first matter of business is review and approval of the minutes of 3/12/21 meeting, which is linked in your agenda, which is on your calendar appointment. And so I'll just give it a minute if folks want to take a look at that, and then we'll just need a motion to approve the minutes or make any changes.
And while people are doing that, Erica, I'll just note that it looks like Matt Chapman is here now, and maybe if it's all right with folks, we should ask Matt if it's his preference to go on sooner rather than later and switch our agenda items, or if he's planning on waiting till 3:40.
You know, I'm happy to go on sooner rather than later if that works into your schedule and how you want to proceed. I'm also happy to wait if that's the subcommittee's preference.
I think it's
sorry I'm late. I'm not sure if you were looking for guidance from me, but I'm here.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
I think that makes sense to move the open meeting law piece. We have 10 minutes scheduled for that, and we can do that right after we do the approval of the minutes. So if anybody has had a chance to look at that, do we have any changes that need to be made? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Ann, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Dave, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ann and a second by Dave to approve the minutes from the 3/12 meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes approved. We can welcome Matt Chapman to talk about open meeting law, public records, and conflict of interest.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm Matt Chapman. I'm the General Counsel for the Agency of Natural Resources. And a couple weeks ago, Jane sent out an email that contained presentations that were put on by the Attorney General's office and myself at the larger Climate Council meeting. And at that particular time, I came in and did a follow-up and gave members of the council an opportunity to just have a sort of free exchange, ask questions, and so forth. So folks should feel free. I've started most of these just by pausing and asking the question of whether you have any questions and whether we want to start to have a dialogue around it. I'm also happy to sort of take a step back and give some high-level thoughts on open meetings and public records. All right. Seeing no hands.
I have my hand up.
Oh,
Ann has her actual hand.
You saw your actual hand.
Oh yeah, I should use my digital hand. Thank you, Matt. I read through all the materials. That's quite a training. I appreciated that. I guess I have a question. I work part-time, and I feel my employer is covering part of my time contributing to the work of this committee, which I'm really grateful for. So I just need to give them an update of what's been going on. So I was thinking I would just include, we have a weekly Teams meeting. That's how I would do it. I would just, do a little verbal summary in the Teams meeting, or else I could do it in an email when I get I would think I would wait until I get my really exciting state email address. So any thoughts about that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we've been sort of saying is that when you're doing work that's related to the committee, regardless of sort of the capacity that you're doing it in, it probably is a public record. But if you're not dealing sort of with a quorum of people who are a part of like a subcommittee like this, it wouldn't trigger the meetings law. So certainly verbal sort of updates to groups that you're involved in are not a big deal. And I guess I would just say with respect to, sort of written communications, they are theoretically subject to the Public Records Act. So if we had some sort of request for any communications that you might have had to anyone outside of the Climate Council, for example, that we would need to produce those. So
Thank
I
you.
don't know if that triggers anyone, any additional thoughts. I mean, I think two little rules that are worth sort of remembering as a part of the Public Records Act and Open Meetings Law is one is anything you write that's related to the business that you're conducting as a part of the subcommittee is probably subject to the Public Records Act. So just know as you do that, that's probably out there. And the second one, someone said it yesterday, and I think it's a good sort of note, is don't hit reply all to members of your subcommittee. The way Vermont has interpreted the Open Meetings Act, anytime there's communications amongst a quorum of the members of a committee, that constitutes an open meeting regardless of what format it takes place in, whether it's digital or whether it's physical, right? So There are exceptions to that for scheduling, and we've also said, look, inevitably you're going to share like documents or things to help prepare other members of the subcommittee for a subsequent meeting. But to the extent it's deliberations or communications around topics, those are all subject to the the open meetings law and all of the sort of notice requirements and so forth that go along with them. The Public Records Act, so it's records under Vermont's Public Records Act are very broadly construed. So it's any communications, digital, physical, sort of regardless of format. So documents, both electronic and physical, voicemails, texts, email. And as I think was noted, I think everybody's getting partner emails, and we strongly recommend that you use those partner emails. It helps, me and us, that we don't have to come to you and ask for you to go through and look through your private emails and produce private emails that may topically relate to the information at hand. So that's sort of my quick high-level summary of open meetings in public records.
I guess I do have one question.
Sure.
When we switched to the state emails, is there a time frame where that takes effect? Like the fact that we've already sent a few emails from our own emails, is it too late anyway?
No, and I think the other thing is if we ever get a Public Records Act request that says, every member and subcommittee member, we want to have everything they have ever written associated with their subcommittee work. We'll be reaching out to you and asking you to produce those records. I'm not going to ask you to give me access to your private email or anything else. We're going to rely upon your good faith efforts to produce information that's responsive to. Good point. So some subcommittee members have said, just casually at these sort of forums that we've been having, that once they get their partner email account, if there's anything that they've done, they're going to forward it to that email account so that everything's sort of in one spot, and that they don't have to worry about trying to separate their activities that way. So.
Any other questions for Matt? Hey, Matt, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. So, Catherine, I thought I would handle the subcommittee membership piece, and then you can facilitate the work plan piece of the agenda.
That makes sense.
Okay. So thanks to everybody that provided some feedback on nominating an additional subcommittee member to take the place of the natural systems expert that we had originally slotted for Don Campbell. And so I've got the results of the folks' rankings. I only received three separate rankings, so just keep that in mind when you're taking a look at this. I'm going to share my screen. It's easier to do that. Okay, so what we have is this is the total results, and then we've got this ranked choice column over here. We had a vote for Dr. Kulkarni. We had a vote for Jen Holler from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. That's probably really small. I'm going to get that a little bit bigger for everybody.
Does everybody know the trick with Teams, where if you have your mouse and you hover and you hit Control, you can zoom it yourself and roll over it? Anyway, I just did that, so it's helpful when looking at spreadsheets.
We had a vote for David Raphael from the town of Panton, Kate McCarthy from the Natural Resources Council, Elena Mahali from Conservation Law Foundation, Jens Hawkins Hill from he's from ANR, and is John Copons, I think I'm saying that right, from the Vermont Council on Rural Development. And we had 2 votes for Shane Jakewith, who is the Watershed Program Manager at the Nature Conservancy. In addition to that, one name that didn't make it on the list is Candace Pearson. She is actually included over here in the cross-sector mitigation. Where'd she go? I had her up here. There she is. Right there. I'm not sure if if her expertise meets what we're looking for here, but I wanted to point out that we neglected to bring her over to the resilience and adaptation results where she belongs. She was nominated 3 times. It's from Brattleboro, and has she's with Building Green, and has expertise in resilient design for buildings, which is a little bit different than what we were looking for here, but I just wanted to point that out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different people that were nominated. One with 2 votes for our natural systems representative that we're looking to fill on the subcommittee. I thought we would just kick it off with some discussion, and if there were any additional thoughts that folks wanted to put out there on the nominations that were, I was hoping through this process we'd be able to have like rankings with, and we'd have some cross, we would have, it would show that there was a top choice, but right now we've got Shane Jakewith that has the most votes with 2. So I think it's probably just worth having a discussion about who we'd like to invite on to the subcommittee for this representation, and who we think also has the time and meets some of the geographic representation that we want to ensure occurs.
Erica, do you want to let them know about Mindy as well? Because it's not just Campbell, but it's Mindy.
Yep. So Mindy Blank, who we had nominated she's in charge of the community resilience organizations throughout the state. We had nominated her to fill the role on individual resiliency, as well as community networks and how they support resiliency at the local level. She is not going to be able to join us. So we actually have right now we have 7 total members on the committee. So we do have room for a couple more people, and we do need to have a discussion included in our discussion about, we wanted to have a natural systems person. We wanted to have somebody that could speak to the individual resiliency. So let's why don't we open it up for discussion around that? I'll jump at once.
Well, I wanted to let you guys talk, but I'll throw my weight behind Shane Jakewith. I think he would bring a tremendous expertise, and before working at the Nature Conservancy, he was a river scientist at DEC for 20 years, doing floodplain regulations and thinking about downtowns and communities, as well as river geomorphology. So I think he would bring a lot of good expertise.
Just hearing that background, that seems like the piece we're missing too, even when you're looking at the, the list we need to create on where we need to identify where we need to become more resilient. So.
Yeah, this is Chad here. I don't know him either, but that sounds like a pretty, a pretty spot on resume for the need.
Yeah, and
I don't
Stephanie.
either, but
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying I don't know him either, but if others feel that he's the good fit, I would totally support it.
Yeah.
I do know him. I have worked with him, and he is a neighbor too, just, just to be clear, up the road from me. And I've served on the planning commission with him here, and he got twice as many votes as anybody else. So, so yeah, I definitely would support him.
Okay.
What's
Does
nice?
it meet our geographic need,
He's in
Erica?
Huntington.
Not, I don't think, Joe, you live in Montpelier, don't you?
No, I live in Huntington.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I thought you were in Montpelier for some reason. Yeah, so he's along the 89 corridor, which is, you know, inside the realm of where we wanted to have folks from outside of that realm as well. But I think there's reason enough to, you know, his subject matter expertise probably weighs heavier than the geographic representation, unless I'm off the.
And he's not representing, you know, a geography, you know, and I think the Nature Conservancy is global. I mean, I don't know if they're global, but they're definitely national, and he's worked all over the state. So I think, you know, he's going to bring a, you know, wider perspective than just where he is.
Yeah. And if I could, this is Chad here. I've sort of been thinking about this. It's great to have diverse perspectives from across the state. And I think we worked really hard to do that the first go around. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, a significant percentage of Vermont is kind of within the 89 corridor, especially the northern part of it. So I'm not sure we want to sort of, disqualify somebody based on where they choose to live at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also was going to ask if we should think. I mean, hopefully he's receptive, but if not, should we have a backup, a second choice, if we will?
Yeah, I was actually you hit on the point that I was going to make, which was, do we have a second choice here, just in case he's able to join?
Right. I may defer to others because I think there's probably others here that have greater expertise in this regard. So
Okay.
Happy to hear what other folks think.
I actually would like to hear from Ben and Stephanie and Marion, because I know you folks have worked with the types of people through the hazard mitigation process that we're looking for here. Just of that list that I announced, are there anybody on there that stand out to you that would fit this bill?
This is Marion. I can, sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
No, you go first.
I can just say I wasn't too involved in the hazard mitigation process, but in working on some other processes and sort of thinking about the role of rural resilience and adaptation, and from the discussions at the last subcommittee meeting, to me, Kate McCarthy sounded like a really good fit for that. I think bringing the perspective of communities and community adaptation, and I know she's had quite a role in some discussions about across the state about adaptation and sort of what that looks like for the future of Vermont. So that was my thought, but I don't know Shane, and he sounds like could play a good role as well. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, so this is Stephanie. I think from an ecology standpoint, Shane is a better fit than Kate, but overall for the committee, I think Kate would be a phenomenal addition. She was the one who stood out to me as far as people I know on this list. And I think I originally had her on my list of people who would be good on this committee. So she's fantastic. I think she'd be a great addition.
Agreed.
I agree with both of those.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Lindsay Curley has her hand up.
Yeah, I should follow the rules. Kate was the name I was going to throw out there. I had inquired around a little bit, and again, I don't know Kate, but her name came up multiple times, so just want to reiterate that as well.
Okay, any other thoughts around keeping Kate on our secondary list in case Shane doesn't work out? Okay, awesome. Well, Catherine, I think between the two of us, we can figure out who can reach out to Shane. I'm happy to, and see if he can commit to the subcommittee, and we'll go from there. Now, so that means we would have a subcommittee of 8, and so we don't have somebody that we specifically nominated to represent individual resiliency and sort of the support networks that are available at the community level and how that plays into community resiliency. I want to throw this out there. I think we've got 8 members plus a number of staff support on this committee. Do folks feel like we are in need of another committee member to specifically represent that point of view, or just given the folks that we have here, and knowing that we can always bring in people to inform our work, and that this is not an exclusive process. This is really meant to be an inclusive process as we endeavor to complete our work. Do folks think that we need to try to get another committee member on that would represent that realm?
I think we're okay without it, and mostly I'm thinking about just the need to start to move forward.
Yeah.
And you know.
Yep. Anne has her hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, Heat Squad that I work for is a program of NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, and that's an affordable housing agency. And so we have, it's not my area of work specifically, but we have a pretty good idea of what the barriers are for people. So I can provide some of that. And I also agree with Joe that it would be really good to move on, but I'm not averse to having another person. And is there any reason to have an odd number of people on the committee?
I'm getting a head shake from Jane.
I think you're operating by consensus, and you'll all notice in that process roadmap that was shared earlier today, that'll be hopefully finalized on Monday at the meeting. It clarifies the process around voting if you have to vote, but as you get into more contentious subjects, but I think by operating by consensus, you can have an even number.
Good.
The only thing it really impacts with that method of operation, the only thing it really impacts is quorum. So with an 8-member board, you need 5 people for quorum. With a 9-member board, you still need 5 people for quorum. So it impacts that. I don't think that we are going to struggle to have a quorum. So whereas that might be a concern in some boards, I don't think it would be here.
I'm just trying to figure out how to get my hand down.
Oh,
my digital hand.
Here, I lowered it for you.
Thank
you.
And Stephanie just added in the chat that she would put in a plug for Kate McCarthy, regardless of whether Shane agrees to participate, and getting us to 9 in that way.
Chad here, I would support that. I have worked with Kate. She's fantastic. She does know the community development work really well. Future growth planning. I think I would agree to having 9 and including Kate as well.
Okay, what do folks think about that? Do we have some consensus around that? Anne's got a thumbs up.
I'm okay.
Joe's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like without some significant voices in disapproval, we'll move forward with that. We'll reach out to both of them and ask them to participate. Be great. Okay, I think we're all set on membership.
They have to say yes.
I know. Okay. So why don't we move into work plan development and Catherine's document to look at.
Yes, I do. I'm not as well versed in Teams as all of you, so I'm going to do my best here.
If you need me to share, I am happy. If you want to walk it through, I can share it. I just need to find your email from yesterday real quick.
Okay. That might work better if you want to put it up and then you can type and I can facilitate. Does that work?
Yes. Let's see. Just a second here.
So thank you all for taking the time to send in comments. I know not everybody could get to it and some of you sent it late and there were lots of apologies attached with all of those things. And I'll just let you know that you don't need to apologize because we all know if you didn't get to it, you don't need to apologize. If you send it late, you don't need to apologize. We are all doing our best to fit this in with everything else we have on our plate. So we will all be offering each other grace throughout this process and understanding as we do our best to make all of this work. So the version I sent out does not have the comments from Anne, which I did receive either later yesterday or this morning. So I'm sorry, Anne. So you'll just have to pipe up when we get to yours. Okay. But thank you for sending them. So I think what, just as a quick overview, Erica and I took some time to take the comments that we did have from people and go through and give us a starting point for each of these objectives that we have in our work plan. Some of you made some suggestions to rewording the objectives, and we didn't do that because they were taken from the work plan, from our charge, which we had already submitted. So we didn't go ahead and make any of those changes, but we at least left some of the notes or tried to incorporate those comments otherwise within the strategies. So that's why you'll see we didn't make any changes to the actual wording of the objectives. Our goal here was to at least have the outlines of what our strategies might be to accomplish these objectives, recognizing that for many of these, we're going to have to add a lot more detail, assign specific committee members and staff, and look for some consultant expertise as we move forward. So jumping right in, if that is a nice enough introduction, let's go ahead and first start talking about objective number 1. You'll see for most all of the objectives, we did add a first strategy of identifying what additional stakeholder input or public input we might need on the item. And then traditionally jumped into data collection, the inventory of what's already been done, and then figuring out where the gaps are and what needs to happen. Are there any specific comments on objective 1 and the strategies associated with it?
Well, just the comment that I made. So as I read this, I just thought its focus just on planning was too limiting, and that's why I had suggested some edits to this. and it's sometimes that what I'm finding through this process, it's a little confusing because there's the act itself, then there's some documents that have kind of come after the act, and there's several of those now, I think. And so I couldn't find this objective in the act. I mean, the act lays out, clearly the rest of the objectives, but it doesn't describe this act. So I assume this objective 1 came from something else. You said the charge. I thought I looked at that too. But regardless, my point is still the same. It seems like I think we're like reviewing existing efforts, period. But I would have said, I suggested, planning, programming, and projects, maybe something like that. Because I think, that's really what the inventory does that we started. And that doesn't mean that inventory was headed in the right direction, because we really sort of, in state agencies, we just did it. We just started, without lots of direction on it. But it's just logical to me that we should be thinking beyond simply planning. It's planning, programs, and maybe other activities. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we have it, if this is part of our charge, I would suggest we change the charge too, if that's possible.
Yeah, maybe if I can respond to that. And first, the way the charges were crafted were at the beginning, recognizing they've had work done on them by committees at this point. They were the language from the statute pulled that was clearly spelled out for your subcommittees, but also trying to do the best to figure out what the statute was asking for and putting that work in the buckets that made sense for it. And so some of the language is direct language, and some of the language is a compilation of best analogies of what we thought it was asking for. And I think, you know, the inventory, and specifically, it speaks to programs, strategies, and initiatives right. in the statutory language. And so it's trying to think about like what's responsible for this group. And we were talking about this a little bit in ag and ecosystems this morning. And I think like some like coordination between your two efforts would likely make sense, because some of those programs and strategies and initiatives to get at those will have overlap with community planning and resilience. And so, yeah, the inventory, I think refining it the way you have makes sense, because it is more than planning, but where it exactly comes from originally, maybe I can do a little homework while you guys keep talking and see if I can figure it out too.
Yeah, I guess a quick response to that, if this is really just based on, someone's best interpretation of what the law says, then, it seems like we should, if it's helpful, I guess I would ask if people agree with what my basic point, which is we're not just talking about planning, we're talking about, all the things that are important.
Yeah, I think that was the general approach that everybody was thinking when we shared this, when we discussed it originally.
So I did make a quick update to strategy B to include that language that's in the statute about state and local programs, strategies, and initiatives. Do we want to include that line, strategies and program strategies and initiatives up into the objectives and just make it like as long as it's in line with what it says in the GWSA? We just want to be clear. We avoided changing the objectives because we were concerned about messing with the intent that's in the GWSA. But if that's consistent with the language, then I think, especially for objective 1, we could just add that piece in there so that it's not specific to just planning. Mm-hmm. Okay. So.
Dave, did you have your hand up? I saw it go up and then go down.
I was trying to figure out how to use it. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
Keep practicing.
Great. Okay. What other comments do we have about objective 1 and the draft strategies we have before us?
Just so everybody knows, this is really a core document of ours that we'll continue to add depth to. As you see, we need to identify timeframes and really get specific about what the outcomes are expected to be, because even though some of the objectives, they're just not like real measurable objectives, and so we want to be clear that we have identified what the expected outcome is with this series of strategies. And so we'll really pinpoint that after we've gotten some feedback from the larger council on Monday. This is really presented to them in terms of a scope of work for this subcommittee.
And Jane, are we supposed to have at this point our consultant needs? Is this something we should be talking about today, or is this something we will be working on later?
Later.
Okay.
Yeah, that was. I'm glad you brought that up. That was something that was originally put forward for committees for the March Climate Council meeting, and the way things have been progressing with the input from science and data in particular. It's something we're going to talk about at the full council, and how to bring in the subcommittee sort of. It's forthcoming. It's still coming.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that And so if there's no more comments or suggestions on objective 1, recognizing that we will continue to refine this and add more details and understand how a consultant and other committees work will feed into this. If there's nothing else on objective 1, we can move to objective 2. Recognizing we have 6 of these in 20 minutes. Dave, your hand is up.
I do have a question now on
All right.
regarding objective 2, the comment about clearly defining community infrastructure. I just wanted to point out that the more specific you make that definition of infrastructure, the more it may be limiting as to what you're considering. We run into this all the time when we're looking at funding applications for different projects. It's all about how infrastructure is defined. So I think we would tend to be more general than specific if it's possible. I know it opens up to a lot more things to review though.
Yeah, a point of clarification that's needed and that we would include in what we put forward to the council is that definition of community infrastructure, because it's not, community infrastructure doesn't necessarily equal critical infrastructure. And if we're talking about building in resilience, especially for infrastructure in general, generally people think of critical infrastructure, and community infrastructure can mean a lot of different things. It can be, you know, it can be a lot broader. So we need to ask for some clarification from the council on that, what the intent is.
And also we're trying to understand if the intent of that is to mean community infrastructure in terms of the social structures and people capacity, or if it's just talking about the things that we build. And so we're looking for a little more understanding about the intent there. And I see, Anne, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I had a few comments on some of the strategies, if the subcommittee would entertain them. The first was strategy B, obtain fossil fuel consumption data at the municipal level. We talked a little bit about this the last meeting. The departments, tried to turn over every rock and stone to figure out how to get this data, especially for the unregulated fossil fuels. Really, that data is just available at the statewide level at this point. So I don't know if this needs to be modified to say that that's to obtain a framework for, or set the wheels in motion to obtain a framework. It's just that, in the next 6 months that won't be obtained. I do know the Science and Data Subcommittee has put into their scope to identify gaps in data, especially at the sub-state level. So there might be some overlap there with what that committee is doing. If you don't mind, if I just cover I had suggestions on 3 strategies here. The next one,
Before we move on, so how would you recommend that we might modify that schedule? Are you suggesting that we might just have to move forward without that knowledge and just recognize that fossil fuel is being used at the local level? And
I think it's either a longer term work of the Climate Council, or it's putting in process statutory changes that would enable the Climate Council to obtain that data. Right now, there's limitations on how it's reported, and there's limitations on the ability to share that data because it's a tax form. So it would have to be probably some statutory changes that the committee would recommend in order to make that data available. And it would also be related to, so it's related to time frame, and it's related to how precise that data is that you want. If it could be, right now you can take that data at the statewide level and make a lot of assumptions based on census, et cetera. The regional planning commissions know very well from their Act 174 planning. So it's sort of granularity, specificity, and time frame.
Great.
Is it really about evaluating whether or not the data are available and then recommending what to do based on that evaluation?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Thanks, Joe.
So say that again, Joe.
Evaluate the availability, I think I said, of the data and develop recommendations, as necessary to obtain it, or something along those lines.
Or
Too
even
bad
a
we didn't have.
recommendation if you can't obtain that data.
Yeah.
What was that,
Evaluate
Mike?
the.
Oh, sorry.
Or a recommendation on what to do if you can't obtain the data at the municipal level.
Not sure. I think it may have been Dave. I just muted him, so I hope he can unmute himself.
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, okay. You can
Yeah,
unmute yourself.
I'm by myself.
All right, so Anne, let's keep going on your comments. I think we've got the general idea here. Thank you both for that. You're muted now.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Got a kid running around here. In service day for schools.
Fun.
The next one related to, let's see, this must have been strategy D. Evaluate local electrical system needs and gaps. I think my suggestion here was just to broaden it beyond electricity to energy writ large. So my suggestion was identify challenges to rural energy resilience and options to address those challenges. You could even have communications in here as well. It seemed to me that energy was more appropriate because some of the resiliency challenges relate to at least existing fossil fuel systems, fossil fuel backup systems, the duration of fuel supply for those systems, and it's not electric related. It could implicate electricity in terms of solution sets, but looking more broadly at energy seemed appropriate.
Does that make sense with everybody else?
I have evaluate challenges to rural energy resilience and develop recommendations for, I'll just say, system needs and gaps. This one spoke specifically to what is really the third part of this objective, which is develop best practice recommendations for creating a distributed, redundant, storage supported local electrical system.
So this is both at the individual premise level and the whole community level, looking at both things here. Yes.
I think so. And how they work together. Any other comments on objective 2, and do these changes make sense in terms of the strategies?
I just had one more, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just related to strategy G. The word electrification, adequate electrification, I guess I'm not really sure what that means. Electrification has been used to mean getting electricity to rural communities in the past. Yes. I'm not sure if it means electrification of heating and transportation, and if you want to make that explicit.
I think it's really relating to the wording and the objective, which is about the system. So I don't know. I'm not the electricity person. So looking at the language of our objective.
I mean, I think we've got electricity to most customers who want it. So I would think it's more about reducing greenhouse gases, and that's how I originally read it.
But I think the strategy here is really to take that last piece of our objective, which is the best practices for the distributed, battery supported, resilient electric system. I think that's the language. Yeah. And recognizing that those recommendations will come from cross-sector mitigation partially, and how do we make sure they mesh with the rural needs. So I understand electrification is not the right word. You can tell this was written by two people who don't do electricity regularly.
Well, this is Chad here. I think there is an element to, delivering electricity in Burlington is a lot different than delivering electricity, up in, I don't know, somewhere in the kingdom. And so, I think we need to be cognizant that rural communities are going to need to have a greater, grid infrastructure that's going to handle additional, additional sources of generation as we use that term electrification to connote, transforming our transportation networks as well as our home and business and institutional heating.
I mean, it could be something like to provide avenues for electricity resilience for rural communities or something like that. Does that word mean something really specific? Electrification means something really specific, and
Sure.
It means two specific things. And I don't think we need either of them. So.
Sure, understood, Anne, for sure. That's right.
And thank you for catching that.
It could be electrical infrastructure. So that could mean charging stations. It could mean supporting energy going back onto the grid.
Yes.
So for a resilient electric infrastructure for rural communities.
Correct.
Okay.
That sounds.
So refining recommendations from the cross. So we have strategy F and G, and they look very similar. So refining cross-sector mitigation committee recommendations on reducing GHG emissions to provide.
Yeah, I wonder if G was really supposed to be about resilient electrical infrastructure, whether that comes from battery or storm hardening the physical grid line. It could mean any of those things, or all of those things.
So this one is about for resilient electric infrastructure.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Are there more
So
comments or thoughts?
I want to be clear. F is about taking what cross-sector mitigation says and translating it for best practices for rural communities to reduce GHG emissions, while G is about taking what cross-sector mitigation says and providing recommendations for how rural communities can increase the resilience in their electrical infrastructure. I think when this says refine recommendations of cross-sector mitigation committee, I think we also need to take the lessons learned and the findings from a number of other avenues like the state hazard mitigation plan and things like that. So it's not just going to be based on what cross-sector mitigation says and has for recommendations. I think it's a compilation of all of those.
And we may also have some early work from the comprehensive energy plan at the state level that could feed into it.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, Erica. Is this for individual residences versus the overall community? Because I do think where that resiliency comes from and where the recommendations come from depend on what you're talking about. Whether it's resiliency in the home, resiliency in the whole community, resiliency in the lines, there's a lot there.
Go ahead, Ben.
Something that's come out of our work on COVID-19 economic recovery is the importance of e-connectivity. And I say e-connectivity rather than broadband, but I wonder if between F and G, there's room to shoehorn in e-connectivity as well as electrical supply per se.
I think there's definitely a role for ensuring that's part of the critical infrastructure definition that we refine.
Right. So reviewing existing recommendations we'll probably review existing recommendations and make recommendations for fortifying critical infrastructure.
And when we refine the definition of critical infrastructure, I think ensuring that that's part of it makes a lot of sense.
In the broadest definitions that we use at VEM, it is. So I can just leave that there. Okay, good. Any other items under objective 2?
All right, we're going to move on to number 3. So we got a few comments from folks about some existing resilience tools that exist. Mike Burke mentioned one that GMP has worked on and he shared. And then Anne did comment that the Department of Public Service also has one that they're working on through the FEMA project. So there are definitely existing tools that we have that make a lot of sense. And it was clear when we were working on the strategies that objectives 3 and 4 really work together, where objective 3 is about, an outside assessment of municipalities and parts of municipalities and where the vulnerabilities exist. And objective 4 is a tool for municipalities themselves to look inward and understand where their vulnerabilities exist. So when we're talking about those two, just keep that kind of distinction in mind. But it was clear for both of these objectives that a lot of work has been done, and the goal is definitely to build on that work. Comments on objective 3?
I think Anne and I may be talking about the same thing because the department did help us on that too. Is that true, Anne?
Yeah, we our hope, we haven't started our project yet where it's dependent on funding, but it would use the work that GMP has done, which we gave some feedback on to identify the various factors and as a starting point, and to address non-GMP areas of the state. So that it could change, but it could change as a result of the work this subcommittee does as well.
This has been just a note for later, again, sort of starting to get into the weeds a little bit, but as you work on objective 3 and objective 4, bear in mind that one of the action planks of the current state hazard mitigation plan is, and something that we have a working group around, which got sidetracked by COVID-19 for a year, is the state's existing Emergency Relief and Assistance Program, ERAF, which is designed to incentivize communities for doing proactive resilience work. And we recognize that it's time to refine and update that formula, if you will. And so this is one place where the work of this working group could feed into an existing ongoing program initiative. So don't forget ERAF.
We won't. Okay, we'll move on to objective 4. Where did Catherine go? Okay. Objective 4. Like Catherine said, these really work hands in hand, and we would expect that this objective would result in some sort of report or white paper that has a series of recommended tools that are available for municipalities we start off with identifying the the plan for stakeholder engagement and refine what the purpose and requirements are, the tools are. There's definitely some research that needs to occur related to the tools, and this also ties back into the inventory because there's a number of those that are there, and then making a recommendation on available tools. There she is. And so are there any modifications that folks see there? I mean, it's somewhat straightforward. It's just a process of figuring out what there is, assessing what the gaps are, and then making recommendations based on that.
Erica, this is Chad here. I see my comment here in the, Catherine inserted it here. I just want to make sure that we are recognizing that, not all communities are going to be able to directly invest in this infrastructure, but that there are, there's access to capital, third-party financed capital for many of these improvements. Like, for example, the EV chargers in the future are going to be, a lot of them are going to be third-party financed. So I just want to make sure that we're not just saying that communities need to directly invest in the infrastructure, but that they have access to capital for that investment in that infrastructure. Okay. That makes sense. And then I just bought myself 5 minutes, but I've got a hard stop here, so I'm gonna have to jump.
Okay, thanks, Chad. We need to move on to our last two objectives, which are a lot. They're a lot more straightforward. Recommending a means to securely share self-identifiable vulnerable residents information with state and local emergency responders. There is a program that already exists to be able to do that. So it's a matter of inventorying other methods used by other jurisdictions to inform the CARE program, which provides, it's a program where folks can self-identify as having certain vulnerabilities and limitations for being able to leave their home in the case of an emergency, and then developing recommendations for the modifications of that program. That program exists at the 911 board, and so this one's relatively straightforward. And I'm just going to move to the next one, and then we can open back up for conversation. Utilizing VEM biennial reports. We don't produce a biennial report as of yet, so we actually need to create that biennial report. But the intent here is, when speaking with the committee that made this recommendation, it was to look at the local emergency management plans, as well as the local hazard mitigation plans, as well as any other relevant data, to produce a report on a biennial basis that would inform what municipal vulnerability looks like on a statewide basis, that could be used to develop some targeted policy recommendations. So that's and we may need to add in or subtract out and just determine what needs to be included in that report. Any other thoughts or comments on objective 5 and 6? And I see Catherine.
Yeah, thanks for finishing up. I'm sorry, my computer just decided to turn off for some bizarre reason. So thank you for finishing up. Are there any other comments on our objectives and strategies for right now, recognizing that we will be using this as our framework for moving forward and can make changes and additions as we go?
This is Anne. I just have a quick comment on objective 6. Based on what you just said, Erica, if I heard you right, do we want to change that word utilize? Do we want to, do you want to put it in here as a goal that you're going to, as an objective that you're going to write them and then we will utilize them?
I think this is what is in the statute. So I think we want to be careful about how we, yeah. So the strategy has to be developed.
There you go. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to, I can make that change, develop and then utilize. And I think that's that's the ongoing work of the subcommittee and the Climate Council, is to review those, depending on, how things look in the future. So, okay, sorry for the kids are in the background here. So that's what you folks are hearing, if you're hearing it over the mic here.
Well, thank you everybody for your feedback and input, and we will continue to use this as our working document moving forward. With no objection, let's move on to the final two agenda items, recognizing that people have to jump off. Okay, great. So next we have member announcements and updates. Are there any announcements or updates that we haven't already talked about? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public here that would like to provide a comment? Yes, I see. Is that Ian with his hand up?
It is. Hello, everyone, and thanks for letting me chime in. So for the record, my name is Ian Hitchcock. Good to see you and some other familiar faces. I work as the Climate and Energy Program Associate with the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and I just wanted to quickly chime in with my thoughts on the electrification word debate, because I very much hear y'all that it's a case of the same word being used to mean very specific, very different things in different contexts. I will say in many of the circles that I operate within, I think that word is kind of goes along with the, excuse me, the electrify everything mantra of greenhouse gas reduction, which is to say, I think there's a deep interest in figuring out how we switch sources of heating and transportation in particular to ones that can be used by ideally renewably generated and clean burning electricity. And kind of given the overall mandate and charge of the Global Warming Solutions Act to ultimately, make our greenhouse gas emission reduction, goals now mandates achievable and attainable, I just want to make sure that that second very specific definition of electrification is also reflected in the group and the document. So thank you.
Great, thanks for that comment, Ian. I think that's something we're all keeping in mind as we move forward. Are there any other members of the public who are interested in commenting? All right, hearing none, I will just note that our next meeting is still scheduled for next Friday at 1 o'clock. And I'm sure we have some agenda items in mind, but if there's any specific agenda items that committee members would like to make sure we put on an agenda for next week or an upcoming agenda, please let Erica and I know, and we will go ahead and work on that.
Yeah, I think our initial thought for next week was to take what the council feedback is on the scope of work, which is pretty high level right now, and to add more detail on it, timeline, as well as roles and responsibilities for who will be moving things forward. So really map that out, because this is our pathway to move forward and really get into the work of the subcommittee. Go ahead, Mike. I saw you had your hand up.
It was more, I thought Catherine was about to sign us off, so I wanted to ask just one administrative question about the Monday meeting. Is that more or less put on as a FYI for us, or is that something we should be there for? Just curious what your thoughts are, because that's an 80-person meeting, right?
Yeah, that's an FYI.
Okay.
Certainly, if you want to participate, you are welcome to participate. And if there's anything crucial that comes up in the meeting that we think that subcommittee members should see, we can always direct you to the recording and the time so that you can catch up on it later.
Yeah, and I have a teammate on that already too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, and
I have a related question. That was a good question, Mike. What time is that meeting at?
On Monday?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's at 8:30.
8:30. They're long ones. They're like 8:30 to 12:30.
And you may not have been on, because you came on to our subcommittee a little bit later. You may not have been on the original invite. If you want, you can ask, just shoot Jane.
Jane just sent out a cancellation. That's funny. Okay.
Well, there's another weird. If you email Jane, she can forward you the full council invite.
Thank you.
Okay, well, really good work today, everybody. Thank you so much for your input. We may, as we dive into this a little bit, we may need to give ourselves a little bit more time to dive into these because an hour goes by really, really fast. And I hate having long virtual meetings, but like I said before, this is our pathway to getting the work of the committee really rolling. So we want to be sure that it's really clear and there's no, no confusion about what our consensus intent is. Go ahead, Ben.
Erica, do you want support staff to go to that Monday full council meeting?
Only if you would like to.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the beautiful sunshine today and the rest of the coming days.
We're not worried about wind this weekend, which
Yay!
is nice.
Good solar weekend.
Good. So
Yes.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.